Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Missing Pet Consultant Certificate Program. I'm Bridget Watson, your instructor. This course is Introduction to the World of Missing Pets, Module B, the Societal Impacts of Missing Pets. This is something you may not have spent a lot of time thinking about, but it's very important to understand, both in your own work and in engaging others to help you or to donate to your organization. There are folks out there who maybe don't keep pets and aren't really into animals or animal welfare, but they need to understand that these issues do affect them as they affect everyone in the community. So we'll start by talking about the financial impacts because they are significant, and this is something I like to include in my elevator speech when I'm engaging people to be involved with Missing Pet Partnership and our efforts in the community. Folks need to understand that whether or not they have pets or are involved in this work, there is a financial impact even to them. And the main place where this occurs is in the animal shelters. Now, animal shelters are generally run by cities and counties. There are many private animal shelters out there, which are usually called the Humane Society or the SPCA, although there's no specific definition for those terms. But those shelters who pick up strays are being paid and controlled in some way by the city or the county, or in some cases the state. These agencies are supported by taxpayer dollars, millions of taxpayer dollars. These agencies are very costly to run, and donor funds also support them, especially those who are nonprofits. But we're talking about many millions for each shelter, and this comes from tax money which everyone is paying, whether they like it or not, whether or not they are interested in these programs. So I'll give you a few examples. Now, there are as many formulas as there are animal shelters, and there are some examples in your assignments. But you can kind of get a general idea of what it costs per animal in an animal shelter. And here's the super simple way of doing it, is just taking the yearly budget and dividing by the number of animals. Now, in this example, there's a city shelter with a $500,000 yearly budget, which is pretty low. Most are up in the millions. This would be a shelter for maybe just one city. And let's say they have animal control and sheltering, no special programs, no humane education or anything like that. And let's say they take in about 3,500 animals a year. So if you do the math there, that's about $143 per animal. Now, obviously, there are many variables, so it's not like $143 is spent on each animal, but that's just to give you an example of what it can cost for a very small, low-budget shelter. Now, let's look at a bigger shelter. Let's say there's a county shelter with a $5 million yearly budget, and these are real examples. I'm just not naming the shelter. This agency has animal control, which is field services. They have officers and trucks. They're out picking up animals and sheltering, and also no special programs. This is just a shelter that covers a larger area, and many county shelters do. They cover quite large areas, so they face some of their own challenges in owner reclaim because the shelter may be quite far away from where the animals are being picked up. So let's say this hypothetical shelter takes in 4,500 animals a year. Now, on a budget like that, again, no special programs, no humane education, no birthday parties, no nothing like that. That's over $1,000 spent per animal. That's a county shelter that is not supported by donations or a private fund. So that is $1,000 a year in your tax money supporting this shelter. So people need to understand how this works. So there are financial impacts as well for the owners. And we have dealt with so many owners who are missing their pets. They contact us every day, and we send the calls out to the various missing pet consultants who are able to assist people. And we find that many people will miss work, maybe just for one day, but maybe for much longer. I spoke to a woman recently whose dog was actually stolen from her vehicle. It was a break-in of her vehicle, and they grabbed her purse and some other things. And she had one of those fancy carriers, which they also grabbed for her little dog. And it's unclear whether they actually knew there was a dog in it and just thought it was another purse, or if they also decided to steal the dog, because there were two dogs and they left the other dog in the car. She didn't go to work for 3 weeks. And her boss finally called her and said, "Look, you got to come back to work at some point." So I don't know what happened after that, and unfortunately, I think she still has not recovered her dog. So they might quit if someone is that distraught that they may just stop coming to work, or they might be fired. It's possible that you lose your job for missing so much time unauthorized. So this can have serious consequences for the individual. And there is a trickle-down effect. So when people lose income, unless they have lots of vacation and sick time or some backup funds to support themselves, and they're not living from paycheck to paycheck, as most people are, then they can't meet their responsibilities. They can't care for their families. And then all those other people are impacted. So if you can't pay your rent, the landlord uses that money to pay the mortgage. So that person is impacted. Your creditors, all of your bills, shop owners, you're not shopping, you're not buying things because you don't have money. So this impact ripples out to affect all these other people that the owner interacts with and has financial obligations towards. So in addition to losing money by loss of income, owners can also waste money, and they can waste a lot of money on unscrupulous service providers, and they are out there. One of these groups of people are psychics. Now, if you believe in psychics, I don't have anything to say about that. That's your business if you want to work with psychics. The problem we have with that type of service in the world of missing pets is that desperate people will pay these folks any amount of money to give them information on where their pet is located. And often this information is very general and it's not very helpful. So they'll say, for example, the cat is out in a field somewhere, or it's in the woods, or it's hiding somewhere. They'll describe some scenario that's very general. So that may or may not be helpful. Now, the real problem, and with something we have seen in real cases, is that owners will focus so much on what the psychic has said that they won't follow other advice. They won't do the effective search techniques. They won't go to the animal shelter. All these things that they need to be doing concurrently to have a successful reunion. And I'll give you one example. Years ago, a woman lost her cat, and she reached out to Missing Pet Partnership, and we advised her to check the shelter as one of the things she needed to do. Well, she hadn't done that because she insisted that the psychic told her the cat was out in a field somewhere, and that's where she wanted to look. Well, come to find out, she had a cat-hating neighbor who had previously trapped her other cat and taken it to the shelter. But somehow it didn't occur to her that this could happen again. So it's just amazing how blindsided people can become, that she was actually familiar with the shelter system and had a neighbor who was trapping cats, but she didn't go there because of what the psychic told her. So that's just a good example of how people can get hyper-focused on one outcome and not do the things they need to do. Another problem can be disreputable pet detectives, or more often dog trackers. Now, obviously, we are training you to be a missing pet consultant, and I am careful to not use the word pet detective because that is a job with some significant legal requirements. If you are seriously interested in pursuing a career like that, then we have some folks to whom we can refer you for training. But it is a significant investment in time and money and licensure. While most of the folks interested in this training are either working as volunteers or they already have a job in the business. You're a pet sitter, you're a veterinary technician, you work in an animal shelter. So these are skills that you can use in the job you already have. Now, the reason I say there are some disreputable folks is because anybody can hang up a shingle and say they're a pet detective. Now, it's not legal, but some folks are getting away with it. The downside is that some of these folks do not have properly trained dogs, are not giving people good advice, and are taking lots of money from people, and I mean thousands of dollars in some cases. Now, there's nothing wrong with a professional charging what they are worth or what it takes to cover their costs. Say if they have to travel across the country and stay for a few days in your area, there's nothing wrong with someone charging what they are worth. But if they are not reputable, they're simply taking people's money. And I'll give you an example. There's one individual who claims to have a professionally trained dog who does not and is not legally operating and has taken people out on wild goose chases. The dog goes off in a random direction, and she believes that the dog is tracking where the animal went. We had a case that I got involved in where the dog was quite elderly, and this individual claimed that the dog had gone for miles from the location where it was last found. And the owner was very skeptical because he said, well, my dog hardly wants to get out of the backyard. He went missing in a park while he was on an off-leash walk. And it just seemed very hard to believe that the dog, who was elderly, had run for miles down to the highway, down through town. But this is what this person insisted and charged him a lot of money to give him that information. And sadly, later we got in a real dog tracker who was licensed and reputable, who found out that the dog had traveled not more than a few feet off the trail and had unfortunately passed away. So this is what I mean by people investing money in services that are not reputable. So obviously it's a waste of their money, and it also tarnishes the reputation of those who do maintain professional legal businesses and who really can help people. So there are also scammers, and it's just awful. There's scammers in every walk of life. Right now, as I record this class, it's tax time, and people are getting those calls from someone claiming to be from the IRS. So there's a scam for every part of life, and unfortunately, that doesn't not include missing pets. So one of the most popular scams is called the truck driver. And in that scam, someone will call the owner based on a sign like this one or maybe an internet post, and they will say that they have found the pet. But they happen to be driving through town because they're a truck driver, and now they're like in another state, and they need you to wire money so they can get the pet back to you. So as soon as they start looking for money and telling some complicated story, you know it's a scam. And what we recommend is that if someone calls and claims they have your pet, but it sounds fishy, ask them to text you a picture. In today's world, everyone has a phone that can take pictures and text, so there's no excuse. Unfortunately, some of these people will also claim that they will harm the animal. Some of them are just doing it for fun, which is horrific, but most are asking for money. So I had one example of an owner whose dog had been missing for a while, and he was continuing to look because he lived part-time in the Philippines. So he had returned from the Philippines and was resuming the search for his dog who'd gone missing like a year before, and we were helping him with that. And he told me quietly, he said, I didn't tell my wife, but I got a call from someone who sounded really weird and said that they had the dog, which was a small dog. And he said they told me if I didn't send them money, they were going to put the dog in the microwave. And he was so upset by this, he hadn't even told his wife. So I assured him that it was very, very unlikely that they actually had his dog. They weren't able to produce a picture or give any kind of details, and he did not send them money, fortunately. But these are the kind of things that happen. And when people are desperate and upset and they hear something like that, they often send the money, and the scammers continue on their scam. So in addition to financial impacts, there are simply social impacts when pets go missing, how it affects people's daily lives and the lives of the people around them. So these are some of the emotions that people feel when the pet goes missing. Obviously, they feel grief at some point, especially if it's been a long time, if it's been weeks or months and they feel like they're never going to get their companion back. They start to grieve as if the pet had died, but it's almost worse because they don't know. They wonder, is he out there somewhere starving? Is he with someone? What has happened? There's no, quote unquote closure. They also can feel anger because they don't know how this happened. How did I let this happen? Where is my animal? And then they can also sink into depression, especially if that's their only pet, if it's someone who lives alone or it doesn't have a lot of social interaction with people. They can become quite depressed when something happens to one of their animal companions. Blame is very common. It's a human emotion. We naturally want to place blame. Anytime anything happens, unfortunately, and I'm just as guilty as the next person, rather than looking for the solution, you think, well, whose fault is this? It's just our natural inclination, however destructive it may be. So people spend a lot of energy and even get sick blaming themselves, blaming the person whose fault it may have been, who let the pet get out. And relationships can really be soured or even ended. I once pet sat for a woman whose cat hadn't gone missing but had died while she was out of town on an extended vacation, and the pets were being cared for by her husband, but he wasn't really an animal guy. He just took care of her pets while she was away. And I remember she took every opportunity to berate him for letting her cat die while she was out of town. So that event affected their marriage and their family life. So the same thing can happen if a pet goes missing and is not found, that it can significantly affect family life. There can be family feuds, not just over blame, but over how the situation should be handled. I recently talked to someone and actually wrote an article about it, which is in your assignments, about how when a pet went missing, the woman's family had a different idea of what she should be doing, that they didn't feel she should be spending so much time looking for her dog and that she just needed to move on. And this is extremely common. Unfortunately, you'll also see this with people who really love and care about the person, but they don't understand where they're coming from, and they just want you to get back to normal. They want you to stop grieving. They want you to get back to work and your normal daily life. So if some time passes that they feel is the appropriate time, whether it's a day, a week, or a month, they start telling the owner, hey, you need to move on. Or one of my favorites is, it's just a pet. You can get another one, like it was a pair of shoes. People also say that when a pet dies. So this can create some significant family feuds. And we've seen so many cases where the owner eventually finds their pet. It could be months later. And so they're kind of vindicated, but they have had to go on their own without family support and actually against their family's wishes to continue doing what they have to do to look for a pet. And as you can imagine, this rift probably affects their relationship into the future. So there's sadness, inability to function. Now, this all depends on how bonded you are with your pet and your personal situation. If someone is not that bonded to their animals, then They're just going to be one of those people that says, my dog ran away. Or my cat probably went to live with another family. Some people do that. They just don't worry about it too much. Others are practical. They'll look for their animal for a period of time, and then they'll give up and just say, well, he went missing. But for many people, this can be a crushing blow. And as I mentioned, especially if someone lives alone, if it's their only pet, now they've lost their only companion, and they just can't get through the day without their little routines that they have with their cat or dog. And others are impacted. Family, friends, coworkers, children, everybody else in your life is affected by your inability to function because your pet is missing. And as we discussed, the lack of support that you may be getting, which will make it even worse. Another impact are business impacts. And this is something I started looking into because of all the cases in the news lately of pets going missing from pet sitters. This has had a huge impact on the industry, and also the stories of pets not being reclaimed from animal shelters for one reason or another. All of these negative incidents are really causing some difficulties for the businesses out there. Pet care providers are the #1 business that will be impacted by this. There's negative press. These are 2 examples of articles that were recently in the newspaper, and these things become sensational. People don't want to hear that this is happening. And so it looks bad not just for that particular company or individual who lost a pet, but for the business as a whole. So there are thousands of pet sitters and dog walkers out there doing a great job, having no problems, taking good care of pets. But one thing happens, it makes the news, and this is what everybody thinks is going on out there, that pets are just being lost, that people are negligent and irresponsible, and that has a significant effect. So there's a loss of trust, and then it becomes difficult for people to travel, to hire someone to take care of their pets. And I, along with the rest of the pet care industry, have been working for years to let people know that this is a professional industry. It's not just a job for the kid next door or for someone who wants you to pay them $10 to take care of their animals. But unfortunately, with these kinds of stories, now people are going back to the kid next door model because they're thinking, well, these are companies that I'm hiring. They should be the ones that I can trust. But then these incidents are happening. So there can be obviously negative press, as in these articles, also bad reviews. If you rely on Yelp, as many businesses do, you may get bad reviews, or people just may be overly sensitive and not trusting. And it can be really difficult for people to work with people who are untrusting like that. There can be significant liability, and this is something especially for the pet sitters in the audience, because most of us are self-employed and we maintain our own insurance, but many do not. And if you don't have insurance and someone decides to sue you over something that's happened, you're in trouble. If you're a homeowner, you're in trouble. They can come after your assets. So there is significant liability whenever you are working with animals. Individuals who are extremely upset and wanting either to get money or just to get back at someone they perceived has been involved in the loss of their pet may sue companies. Say if you work for a veterinary hospital, they may also sue individuals. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to win or collect, but that can be a significant stress and hassle for you as someone involved in this. It can be scary to be named in a lawsuit. And so this is a significant impact that can be on you as an individual or on your business or your place of employment. So these are some of the industries that can face not just trouble, but actually a loss of business. As I mentioned, if folks don't travel, if they don't go to the vet, if they stop using these services because they don't feel they can trust them, Or if they just play doctor themselves at home or get the neighbor kid to pet sit, again, they're not participating in engaging the services of these businesses. So obviously pet sitters are a big one. If pet sitters are maintaining businesses and they start to lose a lot of income, it can be difficult for them to maintain the business at a livable wage. Cost of living is very high right now. Rents are very high across the country. Insurance, health insurance, it's not easy for people to maintain self-employment of any kind, and having a significant loss like that can have a big impact on their life. They may not even be able to run their business anymore. They may have to get another job and go part-time, or to stop the business altogether. Dog walkers. There's a big business for dog walkers now, and a lot of folks are working through the apps, which can be a real mixed bag. I don't want to make negative statements about any other organization or company, but I would caution those who work for these companies as pet sitters to know their rights and their obligations, to maintain insurance, to educate yourself on local laws. For example, in most places across the country, it is illegal to board dogs in your home without a kennel permit. Now, I would doubt that most of the folks out there doing this have a kennel permit, and that's your business if you want to go ahead and do that. But when there's trouble, if someone finds out that you're operating without a permit, again, the liability, and that could be a significant impact on your life. Veterinarians. Veterinarians have a hard enough time getting people to come to the vet to get vaccines, to get exams, to treat things. I think one of the biggest complaints of veterinarians of both small and large animals is that people wait too long. They call the vet when something is an emergency and the animal is dying before, instead of going in earlier or calling earlier to get treatment or to do preventive treatment. So if people are losing faith in veterinarians, they're going to go even less often, and that's going to be even more detrimental to their pets. Boarding facilities. So as I mentioned, it's very uncommon for pets to go missing from actual boarding facilities because they're pretty secure, but they can also be losing businesses. If people just have a lack of trust in general of pet care providers, these businesses may also have an effect. And you need to understand that unlike the pet sitting model, the boarding facility model is quite costly year-round because you have to pay for your rent or mortgage, insurance, utilities, and staffing, whether the kennels are full or not. So it may be very full during Christmas, during holidays, during summertime, spring break, etc. But the rest of the time, you may just have a few kennels full and you have the same expenses. So even a small loss to a boarding facility can be a significant impact on the business. Well, that's all been very negative. So let's talk about some positive impacts, because I want you to understand the negative things, everything that can happen and does happen and has an effect financially, socially, and in a business sense. But now you need to know the impact that you can make to start turning this tide the other way. So this is the animal control officer for my neighborhood where I live, and she's amazing. And we assisted her in capturing this feral kitten who was stuck down in a creek. And I don't know what lacerated me more, the waist-high blackberry brambles that I crawled through or this beastly calico kitten. So she was probably a feral kitten born outside, so no owner was found, and she was adopted by the dispatcher and named Mittens. But this officer, Teresa, is just an example of someone who is knowledgeable, and she's working in that field, which is awesome. So she can help people to find their missing pets, and she engages people like me and others in the community who are interested in this and in helping people. So what all of you out there can do, whatever your role is you can help prevent loss. I mean, I don't know how many times I talk to people, Is your pet microchipped? Oh, I think so. I don't know. Or, okay, your pet's chipped. Is it registered? Well, didn't the vet do that? Many people just they don't know anything. They don't put collars and tags on their dogs. They say, oh, well, everybody around here knows my dog, so if he got out, they'd bring him back. I actually had someone years ago get angry with animal control for picking up their dog, which had no ID, because they said, well, he was right outside my house. Why didn't they just bring him back? The officer doesn't know who you are or who your dog is, so obviously if they had known, they would have. So you can help prevent that by working with people, educating people, providing tags and chips either through your shelter or whatever other group you work with in your community. And you can also help to get pets back home quickly by giving people good advice and helping them to avoid the myths and scams that are so prevalent right now. You can keep families together, and this is something we work on a lot with the shelters, whereas in the past, we used to believe that animals that were stray, quote-unquote stray, had been abandoned, had been dumped, had been turned loose. Now we know that while that happens, it's actually extremely uncommon, and that the vast majority of these animals are family pets that someone is looking for, and they're just not able to find them for one reason or another. And picking up animals and adopting them to another home, as we discussed in Module 1, doesn't do anything to help the overpopulation problem that exists in every community. If someone loses a pet and they never find it, chances are they'll go out and get another one. So it's not like anything has changed in the overall population. You can help animal shelters. So by reducing intake, by helping people find their pets in the community, rather than having to go down to a shelter and reclaim, although of course they should be checking the shelters, if they don't end up there, that's freeing up resources. Or if they're there and the owners come and pick them up on day one, we all know if we work in shelters that those kennels being full is a nightmare because animals never stop coming in. And so when we preserve those resources in the shelters, they can focus on pets that are truly in need, people who really do need to surrender their pets, people who have died and there's no family members to take care of their pets, neglect and abuse cases, animals that really do need help, young kittens, young puppies, animals that are sick, injured. Those are the things that we need to be doing to help the animals in our community, not simply just picking up and housing stray animals to an uncertain fate because we are not able to find the owner. And of course, you're going to reduce euthanasia. Any positive impact reduces euthanasia. Reduction in intake, reduction in length of stay, which is the number of days that an animal stays in the shelter. All of these things will help keep animals in their loving homes. If they're in the shelter, to get them out of there quickly before they start getting sick, makes it better for everybody. If you're in business, you should know you're not selling pet care, you're selling peace of mind. And this is so invaluable for people. It's so rewarding when owners say, I can travel, I don't have to worry, I'm on a cruise, I'm going to Europe, I can just have a great time and not worry about it. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want people to do when they're on vacation. They shouldn't be texting you every day to make sure that you got to the house, to make sure that the pets are okay. They should just know this, and so they can enjoy themselves. And ultimately, if you're in business, you'll be more successful. You'll make more money, you can support yourself and your family, and you can be free to do this full time because you have a successful and large group of clients. You can help pets live their full life with their families. First home, forever home is a quote that's used by a group in Los Angeles, and I don't know if they originated it or if other people also use this same quote, but they have a shelter intervention program in Los Angeles where they help prevent people from surrendering their animals. So Part of their work is missing pets, but it seems like most of it is preventing them from surrendering animals. So if animals are with a family, unless there's a serious problem, they should stay with that family for their whole life. They shouldn't have to be shuffled from one place to another or put up in adoption centers or given to another person. You can help them live their full life with their loving families where they belong.